Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Northumberland series. Northumberland is the northeastern tip of all of England. It's a unitary county containing 166 civil parishes. Let's see which one we're in today. Welcome everybody to a brand new district and a brand new county, in fact. The first of 166 parishes here in Northumberland. Behind me is a power station and the mouth of a river. That there is the River Lyne, which empties into this, the North Sea, which we've seen a few times before. And it's nice to hear the waves crashing against the shore, isn't it, Nikki?
Yeah, I'm very windswept, so, you know.
Well, hopefully you'll be a little less windswept when you've walked around this place. Welcome everybody to Lynemouth. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Lynemouth is a village in Northumberland, situated 3 miles northeast of the town of Ashington and in close proximity to the village of Ellington, which is located to the northwest. Unusually for Northumberland, there are no prehistoric, Roman or early medieval sites or finds in the parish, despite the township first being recorded in the 13th century. Sitting right on the North Sea coast, this is one of the smallest parishes in the county, and until the early 20th century, a farm and a cottage is all that could be found here. That's when things began to change. In 1900, the Ashington Coal Company bought large amounts of land here and began building a mining village. By 1927, when Lynemouth Colliery was established, there were 500 houses. They were followed by shops, a miners' welfare institute, primary school and a church. Mining has been a part of Lynemouth ever since. The village played an important role in the 1985 docudrama Sea Coal, about sea coalers making a living from collecting waste coal on the beach. And speaking of the coastline, a whale was once thrown against the rocks close to Lynemouth, but we'll talk about that more in next week's episode. This was a fun one, and it has some hidden gems. Come with me to find them. To begin this episode, we need to talk firstly about Lynemouth Power Station, which has stood as a landmark on this part of the Northumberland coast since 1972. This was the main source of electricity for a nearby aluminium smelter. The aluminium smelter was known as the Alcan factory due to it being owned by the Canadian aluminium company Alcan, which is part of Rio Tinto. The smelter was opened in 1974 and ceased production in 2012. It had a high electricity demand, and so Lynemouth Power Station was constructed only 800 metres away from the smelter. The locations of both the smelter and the power station were based on finding a labour force. You see, aluminium smelting is a very labour-intensive job, and here in Lynemouth there were hundreds of readily available workers because this is a former coal mining area. Many coal mines in the area had shut down, so the unemployment rate here was high.
To research it.
So Nikki's just spotted this on the ground.
Yeah.
We think these are methane caps because this is a former mining area, as we will learn as we walk around Lynemouth. And Nikki seems to think that these are to stop methane from bubbling up under the ground. Is that?
I think there's some sort of vent, but we'll have to have a look and research it and see exactly what they are.
This whole area, of course, sits right on the Northumberland coast. There are lots of footpaths along the sea in Northumberland, and the one we're on right now is the South Northumberland Coast Path. The River Lyne empties into the North Sea here. It's not a very lengthy river all told. It flows roughly eastwards past the settlements of Tritlington, Ulgam and Ellington before discharging into the North Sea at Lynemouth. It's some 25 miles long and has a catchment area of 61.5 square kilometres. Of course, the river is why Lynemouth is called Lynemouth. The village is located literally at the mouth of the River Lyne. Not a tough one to research. And this whole area of Lynemouth Parish can be accessed via this bridge over the Lyne. This is a weak bridge and it interested Nikki greatly. It wasn't long before we were getting an explanation of its construction and why it's so weak. Well, Nikki's just going to explain about these bridges and how they rot, apparently. So
yes, we've got concrete and then we've got metal rebar coming through it, and concrete's porous, and then metal rebar obviously gets hit by the water and it rusts away, which then weakens the concrete, hence weakening the structure. It was very much a thing of the 60s and 70s housing boom, that lots of houses and flats were built using this method, and now it's kind of coming back to bite us because these precast concrete with rebar, which are just then slotted or connected together, a lot of them are now deteriorating, and it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Let's get walking around the village then. Our first landmark is the Miners' Welfare Institute. Described as the finest miners' welfare building in the north, the institute was built in the Georgian style. Lynemouth Colliery was in operation between 1927 and 1994. In 1960, the mine employed 1,734 people, some 1,390 above ground and 344 below. It was owned by the Ashington Coal Company, and it was they who in 1921 built Lynemouth. Its primary purpose was to house all the colliery workers. There were other pits in the area too, for example Ellington, where coal was brought to the surface through a drift and transported via an overland conveyor belt to Lynemouth Pit Washery. There it was prepared for burning at Lynemouth Power Station. Both the colliery and the Alcan factory have now been demolished, but the chimneys of the latter were immortalised in a film. Stick around to find out which one that was. Now, a fair few times on this walk around, you'll be seeing this road right here, which runs right through the middle of Lynemouth. This, believe it or not, used to be a railway line. This street, Albion Terrace, was indeed a railway line. It was the original railway connection to Lynemouth Colliery. A more modern link was then created with the development of the aluminium smelter. There are lots of residential properties on both sides of the street, although there are a few amenities as well. Take for example the shops on West Market Street. Here we can see a pharmacy, and a bit further up is the local chippy. Lynemouth's parish notice board is on this corner where West Market Street meets Albion Terrace. If you're new here, whenever I visit a parish I leave one of these cards. One down, 165 to go in Northumberland. At the end of West Market Street we find St Aidan's Church, which was built in 1925 in association with the establishing of Lynemouth Colliery. It was originally built as a chapel of ease to the parish church of St Mary's in nearby Woodhorn. It's now apartments. So we've come around a corner at the top and we're here to school. This is the NCEA Bishop's Early Years William Leach campus. That's a primary school. It's a bit of a mouthful to say. I believe all these buildings are part of the school. So we'll walk past this and continue on our merry way. Here's something unusual. Outside the school are some gabions. They consist of rocks and boulders encased in a wire mesh, and usually these are used as coastal defences as they absorb energy from waves. Why then would they be outside a school, I wonder? In any case, around the corner we've got this building. This is the rear of Lynemouth Day Centre, and we'll see this from the front shortly. Even though mining is no longer a thing here, the village still has a close-knit community. For over 25 years, the charity which runs the day centre has provided, maintained and managed facilities for Lynemouth's elderly. Their aim is simply to give these people a better quality of life. And we're back on Albion Terrace. The railway line is long gone, but you can see just from the sheer width of the road that this was something else in a former life. Part of the line's former route has been redeveloped into the huge green you can see over the road. So either side of this central street is basically just rows and rows and rows of terraced housing, typical of a mining area. And we're going to go and see some of those now, because we're going to take a right turn here past this shop, or what looks like a shop, and we'll cut through this estate towards our next landmark, which is a medical centre, I believe. It turned out not to be a shop, or at least not anymore. This used to be Cullen's newsagents until very recently. You can see where the old entrance used to be. Now, a well-known and much-loved celebrity used to live in this part of Lynemouth. That would be the voice of darts himself, the legendary Sid Waddell. Although he was born in Alnwick, he grew up in Lynemouth and lived at 102 Dalton Avenue. That's why he was known affectionately as the Lynemouth Lip. After winding our way through the terraces, we reached the Lynemouth Centennial Nature Garden. This was created to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Ashington Coal Company building Lynemouth in 1921. The garden was officially unveiled on Thursday the 5th of May 2022 on the site of a former scout hut in Bowland Road. The once derelict wasteland has now been converted into a pleasant, relaxing area with information boards which tell Lynemouth's story. Now, opposite this garden there's some cottages, and they are called coronation cottages, and as we walked up this road here we said to each other there's got to be a story behind that. Didn't take long and we found the story. What is it, Nikki? So
the 2 rows of retired miners' cottages built during the Depression years of the 1930s by Northumberland Miners' Homes Association. Jubilee cottages opened in 1936, and after the 1935 Jubilee anniversary of King George V, and coronation cottages reopened in 1938 to mark the 1937 coronation of King George VI, both situated close to the site. So those are coronation cottages, and I think just beyond would be the Jubilee ones.
Yeah, it would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I can't see it from here, but I imagine they will be close by. Jubilee cottages are actually elsewhere, and we'll see where shortly. As well as the information boards, the garden features some low-maintenance plants, such as Japonica roseanni. The total cost of the project was just over £31,000. Leaving the garden behind, here we have Jubilee cottages around the back of Chester Square. In fairness, I should have known where these were, because these were a key part of my route plan. That brings us to the medical centre. Originally part of Wellway Medical Group, Lynemouth's Medical Centre is now part of the single practice known as Valens Medical Partnership, which also merged Brockwell and Lintonville Medical Groups. Opposite the medical centre we've got a bus stop. Lynemouth is well served by the local buses. There are 2 which stop here. These are the number 1, which runs from Blythe to Cresswell, and the X20, which runs from Ashington to Alnwick. Now, this is a very interesting area of Lynemouth, because apart from the medical centre, which I'm stood outside here, you've got the village sign which you saw at the beginning of the video, which is right next to this colliery tub, kindly donated by Mr. Ken Johnson, BSc, MSc, mining surveyor, and installed by Lynemouth Parish Council. Also, away to the left, the River Line is down there behind those trees. The line runs under a little bridge here and runs all the way around the back of Lynemouth before obviously emptying out into the North Sea. And also, Nikki has just taken a perch on a bench over here close to the bus stop you've just seen, and close to this there's a little sculpture which I don't know anything about yet, but we will do shortly, of course. Here's Nikki having 5 minutes. Are you all right there, missus?
Yeah, stone one, this one. Could do with it. Could do with a couple of cushions.
Maybe. It might get wet though, it's starting to rain, so...
I don't mind that. You know what, even though it's, you know, we're sort of into late September now, it's still quite warm.
Yeah.
So a little bit of rain is okay.
Okay.
We can manage that.
Right, let's go check out that sculpture, see what it's all about.
Oh.
The sculpture is called Making Waves, and it's by the artist Graham Hopper. A specialist in sculptural ironwork, Hopper was commissioned by Isos Housing to create this eye-catching gateway at the entrance to Lynemouth. He did good, I reckon. At the end of Fenham Road we have Jack's Lane, and that's where the village's allotments are located. To the new viewers out there, finding the local allotments has become a running joke. Expect to see lots of these on TVI. More housing now on Park Road. When built, Lynemouth was supposed to be much bigger. 520 state-of-the-art colliery houses were built here, but originally there were supposed to be 1,750 either side of the River Line. This is the park to which Park Road refers. That building there is the Lynemouth Welfare Pavilion, a community hall beside the village's recreation ground. Next to this is a playground, which recently received a £15,000 upgrade. So like any decent playing field, we have a bowling green here. There we are, right next to the community hub. Playing field is behind it. I believe there's a football pitch on there. And Nikki has found the Lynemouth Recreation Ground under 8s play area.
Now you guys will be very lucky with this one, because I'm really sorry, there's no adventure trail, so we can't watch him making a fool out of himself. But
there's time yet.
Plenty of stuff here for the 8-year-old and unders.
Yes. So we have picnic tables, we've got benches, we've got a slide, we've got some swings, them little bouncy things.
Activity jobs.
Yeah, and you can't get out the other end, so we're gonna have to go back the way we came in. But yeah, something for the little ones. Nikki found a styrofoam plane in here which didn't fly. We're almost all the way around the village now, but there's still two main things to see before we leave Lynemouth behind. One of them is a block of sheltered housing called Park View. It's a retirement housing complex which was built in 1986. Lastly, we're taking a longish walk down a track which leads to Lynemouth Cemetery. From it, we get a brilliant view of Lynemouth Power Station, and in the middle distance is where Lynemouth Colliery was located until it was pulled down. The cemetery sits well out of the way of the village. It's situated at the end of the track, a quarter of a mile away from the nearest houses. Quite why it's so far away from the village we have no idea, but it was worth the walk. We found one Commonwealth war grave in here, that of H. Britnell, Chief Stoker on HMS Imperious. Now, in the film I mentioned earlier, Lynemouth Cemetery is known as Everington Cemetery. Have you guessed what that film is yet? If not, all is about to be revealed. Now, if you think you may have seen this cemetery before, you may well have done if you watched the film Billy Elliot. There was a scene in the Billy Elliot film, wasn't there, Nikki? And what was he doing in said scene?
Billy had brought his grandmother out, and he would come to see his mother's grave, and he had to clean the headstone of the grave, and that was in the cemetery. We think somewhere around this part here there would have been a false headstone laid, so that you know, that it could, you know, the scene could happen. But yeah, so they used this to film that scene in the cemetery, and in the scene you can see in the background all the old chimneys which we were talking about earlier in this video. And here is the scene in question. And after a bit of research using Nikki's phone, YouTube,
yeah, using YouTube, we found the scene, and the grave would have been here, just here in this plot.
See this marking is here. That's where the headstone would have been.
Obviously, a fake grave in the film, not a real one, because obviously there's still some space in here right now for.
Because we could see as he runs across the cemetery, there's a war grave, and he runs past the war grave diagonally across the cemetery, and we
see this one in the background. So it's there. There we are. We are stood in a famous film location. Yes, we found a famous grave in inverted commas.
Yeah.
Right, time to get out of the rain and get back to the car. Time for you to see today's picture bits. Now, if you're new, because I'm assuming a lot of people out there will never have seen me before watching this video, this is something I do at the end of every episode. I find a collection of stills from the internet to pad out the video to give you a bit more information about what's in the place. So here it comes for Lynemouth. And that, as they say, is Lynemouth, the first one down in Northumberland. Only 165 to go.
Geez, not many then.
Not many, no. Hey, it's less than what the East Riding has got, and my regular viewers know full well how well I'm doing with that. So, you know, a couple of trips up north, Northumberland will be doing no time. Now, we've saved kind of the best until last, because where we've parked here on Bridge Road, opposite the Miners' Institute, is this magnificent old building. Now, this is Coast Carvery and Cafe, according to that sign. Isn't that just fantastic, Nikki? 1925 it dates from, apparently.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things I noticed when I came into Lynemouth, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to save that till last, because it just looks fab, doesn't it?
Do you know what else I've noticed?
What's that?
This.
What? Oh, so that's the Northumberland flag with
a
mine on it, and there's a
mural,
headstock and a colliery tub and a guy with his pickaxe. That just about sums Lynemouth up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty much. What did you think to this place?
I thought it was lovely. I thought it's nice and quiet. I'd live here. It's quiet. You've got a, well, in certain places you've got a view of the sea, which suits me, pushes my button. I love to see. But yeah, it's really nice and quiet. And you know, I mean, I know that we've only sort of had, you know, a couple of hours here, and it might sort of belie how the village really is. But I found it's been lovely and quiet, a lovely sort of peaceful seaside place with quite a bit around it actually, and you know, a fair bit to see and a few bits to do, and yeah, a bit of history.
A lot of history.
A lot of history.
Well, Northumberland is pretty much like that everywhere you go.
That's what we
because
want.
my regular viewers will know that I've mentioned Northumberland a couple of times in other areas, because a lot of the places around where we live were influenced by the kings of Northumbria, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of that as we travel around. Yeah. I'll see you in the next Northumberland episode, whenever that may be. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot. This has been the Parish of Lynemouth, and I'm out.